Alright, the hype around JJK chapter 261 is absolutely insane and I can't wait to talk about it, so without any further ado, let's just jump right into this chapter review. And I also just wanted to apologize for my hiatus. Life has just been absolutely insane for the past 2 months, but I'm back and really ready to create more and more content for you all moving forward. So this chapter starts off with Yuji stabbing Sukuna straight through the heart, planning on crushing it and killing the King of Curses outright. It's then when Sukuna is about to activate his domain expansion where he sees none other than Satoru Gojo, but not the same one that we remember. Opening his eyes, we see a Satoru Gojo with the same stitched markings that we see from none other than the most evil sorcerer in existence, Kenjaku. And we learn that this Satoru Gojo has actually come back to life as a vessel for none other than the prodigy himself, Yuta Okkotsu. Seeing as Yuta was the one who killed Kenjaku, we see that he used his innate curse technique copy to take his body hopping abilities. So using this brain hopping ability, we see that Yuta inserted his own brain into Satoru Gojo's body and is now fighting against the King of Curses using the Six Eyes and Limitless Curse technique. Now, personally, I think this is a really unique way to introduce Gojo back into the story, but it's also a little strange and just doesn't sit well with me whatsoever. To many people who were fans of JJK, Gojo was that one character that they just looked to and honestly was their favorite part of the series. And although he's back, it's not the same Gojo that people had come to know, understand, and love. And when we learn about the intricate plan that the Jujutsu sorcerers come up with to execute this, it kind of makes the situation all that more sad, in my opinion. Like, since Gojo's physical body is actually being occupied by a different person, we can basically say, without a shadow of a doubt, that Satoru Gojo is officially gone. But actually getting into the essence of the chapter, it's not just us, the reader, who knows that Yuta is possessing Gojo's body here. Sukuna, laughing to himself and punching Yuji away, said, "Sorry I took you lightly. I didn't think you were capable of doing that, Yuta Okkotsu." And then in the very next panel, we get a flashback of the month prior to the epic showdown between Gojo and Sukuna, where the sorcerers are planning for all these different types of contingencies. And we see that one such contingency that they planned for was the actual death of Satoru Gojo and Yuta to be able to possess him with Kenjaku's curse technique, which I know sounds really morbid and specific, but these guys were really cooking up everything here, I guess. And the sorcerers here are assuming a lot in that killing Kenjaku will basically be a given, which I don't think is necessarily the correct assumption. While Kenjaku isn't as strong as Sukuna, this is still a person who can take down special grades like Yuki Tsukumo and frankly hold his own really well in any combat scenario. But through this plan, we actually learn how Yuta's copy curse technique actually works, like the true mechanics of it. As shown in the diagram when Panda explains this whole plan, we see Rika physically eating Kenjaku's head, meaning that Rika has to eat a body part of the sorcerer that Yuta wants to copy from. And something I thought was pretty interesting and something new that we learned about Kenjaku's curse technique is that the brain has to be physically implanted into the new vessel that he would be jumping to. Because in the chapter, we literally see Shoko transplanting Yuta's brain into Gojo's body. So when Kenjaku has been hopping between multiple bodies throughout the ages, it's likely he had somebody, or maybe Orame, to do this brain transfer for him, which I kind of think is pretty funny. But now going back into the sorcerer's planning, they talk about the different scenarios of what would happen when Yuta takes over Gojo's body and if he could even control the Limitless Curse technique at all. Kusakabe proposes that they just copy the Limitless Curse technique from Gojo's corpse, but Ieri retorts by saying that the Limitless requires the Six Eyes to be effective. And due to the Limitless Curse technique using an enormous amount of curse energy, you basically need the Six Eyes to be anywhere near as effective as Gojo was at using it. So now that begs the question for the sorcerers, how will Yuta's copied body swapping ability interact with Gojo's Limitless and Six Eyes curse techniques? Maki states that copy will only last the 5 minutes that Rika is fully manifested, and what will happen to Yuta after that time interval has ended. It's then when Meimei offers 3 predictions. The first is that if Kenjaku's curse technique functions constantly or at regular intervals, Yuta will be unable to sustain Gojo's body and his soul will potentially die. The second is that if the curse technique functions irregularly, Yuta won't die right away, but he'll die eventually, due to what I'm guessing is just losing control over the body over a period of time. And the third and most positive outcome is that if the curse technique activates only once, then he'll be able to use the Limitless even after the 5 minutes of Yuta's copy threshold has ended. Meme also includes that it's possible that after changing bodies with Gojo, he'll lose his copy curse technique and essentially adopt the Limitless and Six Eyes abilities from Gojo, not being able to go back to his original curse technique. And I think this is an unlikely possibility since we saw with Kenjaku when he was possessing Geto's body that he still had access to curse spirit manipulation and anti-gravity curse techniques, which we know was the curse technique of Yuji's mom, Kaori. Yuta, understanding that this is only a last resort, agrees to fight Sukuna in his domain first before attempting to switch with Gojo's dead body. And just to go into another gripe I have with this whole scenario, it's like Yuta and Gojo are stealing Yuji's thunder and relegating him to the sidelines like he had been multiple times throughout this fight. We saw that before this entire scenario, of course, that Yuji was landing multiple black flashes and things were actually looking up for him, and he was having his main character moment that the entire fan base was waiting for. That's why I have to feel like there's one of these time restrictions that are going to be placed on Yuta/Gojo, because if that weren't the case and he just kills Sukuna, that just doesn't feel like a fulfilling end to the story for me. But going back into the sorcerer's discussion of this whole scenario and Yuta taking over Gojo's body, we get into some murky waters with the notion of tactics versus ethics when it comes to fighting Ryoma and Sukuna. Sure, tactically this sounds like a great plan for them, but ethically you're basically stealing your mentor's body and forcing one of their students to jump in there and expect there to be no emotional repercussions to this. But one of my favorite parts of the chapter, and something Yuta talks about, is that they're taking on Ryoma and Sukuna, the greatest sorcerer in history, so they shouldn't hesitate on abandoning their own humanity to win. He questions whether becoming a monster is really that scary. Maki then argues that Yuta is important to all of them, with Inumaki agreeing with her. But Yuta, furious, asks about Gojo. Wasn't he important to them as well? Throughout the time that he had been alive, they had always let him be the monster and handle things when times got really difficult. So with Gojo gone, someone has to do it, and Yuta mentions that if no one else has the guts to step up, then he'll be the monster that Gojo was. And I think that this sequence alone puts Yuta as one of my all-time favorite Jujutsu Kaisen characters just by having this sacrificial mentality. Gojo, for his entire life, has always been separated from everyone else just due to the overwhelming power that he possessed and not being able to be related to by anyone. And I think Yuta understanding this and wanting to take the burden all off of Gojo's shoulders just makes me respect him so much more as a character than I previously did. But now we cut to the conversation between Yuta and Gojo where he tells him that if he dies, he's taking his body. And not shockingly, Gojo is totally fine with this, but he says that he doesn't plan on losing, so it doesn't really matter what happens to his body anyway. And then we get a unique bit of backstory with Yuta when he says that he heard that he has Fujiwara blood. But previously, Gojo had mentioned that he had Sugawara as well. Gojo, confirming this, mentions that he and Yuta are distant relatives like he had in the past, but this confirms that Yuta has two basically royal families of Jujutsu in his heritage, explaining even further why this dude has just been so OP since the very beginning. But in classic Gojo fashion, he teases Yuta by saying that he may have been born from a higher family than him, so if he doesn't succeed in taking down Sukuna, it'll look really bad. It's then when Gojo tries to get all of his students to leave and for him to take on Sukuna all by himself, to which Maki, Inumaki, and Panda all say that they're coming with him. He argues, saying that he knows that they're all sorcerers but doesn't want to expose them to any excessive gore and violence, and even if everyone in this room died, Old Man Gakuganji would still stand at the top of Jujutsu society, and things wouldn't end up like they did after the Shibuya incident. So this basically confirms that the scene we see right before Gojo takes on Sukuna of all the dead higher-ups was in fact Gojo doing this himself, which I think is something that all the fans saw coming, but it's really cool that Gojo just went through with it and went ham on these dudes, because I know he's been wanting to for a very long time. It's then when Yuta tells Gojo to stop trying to be the monster all on his own, to which Gojo thinks to himself that he can't do that, and it was since the day that Geto left him that he was truly left behind. And this, I feel like, perfectly connects to how I was describing Gojo earlier, in being that he doesn't relate to anyone around him and feels like he's truly separated in every single way. And that's why he feels like he has to take on enormous burden to protect those close to him. Then going into the next page, we get the formation of of Ieri's healing team, so to speak, which we learn consists of Amai, a person that Yuji met during the Culling Games, Nita, as well as Ieri herself. We see that Amai has a really interesting curse technique in that he can increase his sugar levels and transform it into a physical form, then gets hypoglycemia and gets lightheaded. But curious about the extent of this power, Ieri asks if he could infuse another person with that sugar content that he creates. Therefore, as a result of him doing this, he helps compensate for the brain expending all of its sugar while a curse technique is in use. And I think this is a really interesting way of supporting Jujutsu sorcerers during battle because we know the brain is a pivotal part of the body when it comes to curse techniques. So when it comes to healing the brain, his curse technique almost acts as like a reverse curse technique for healing parts of the brain, or at least replenishing it to a point where it would function more efficiently. We then see Amai sadly looking over the body of Yuta Okotsu, where Nita comments that due to his curse technique, his condition won't worsen, but he hasn't healed him. Like Gojo, his body has been split in half and it's surpassed the capacity of Nita's curse technique and even Okotsu's reverse curse technique as well. So we see that thanks to Rika, he's still conscious, but he's at his limit and nearing the end. And the reason that I think he's conscious here, while Gojo wasn't, was possibly due to the time between when he was cut and sent over to the medical team, plus this additional help from Rika as well. It's then we hear from Ieri that she's finished suturing Gojo's body, and once the transfer has been complete, he'll use reverse curse technique at maximum output to apply the finishing touches between this transplant. It's then when we see Yuta make the transfer, and then we cut back to the present where Gojo / Yuta and Sukuna are unleashing their domains at the same time, commenting on how Satoru Gojo had already found the answer to Ryomen Sukuna's barrierless domain, with the final being a full cover spread of Unlimited Void versus Malevolent Shrine yet again. So yeah, a really cool ending to this chapter, and I'm just really intrigued to see how this battle between a fatigued Sukuna and a newly invigorated Yuta / Gojo will go. We know from Kenjaku's experience when he transfers to a new body, he retains all of the memories of the vessel. Therefore, I'm just really curious to see what Yuta will do with this knowledge and how he'll take advantage of the King of Curses here. But what are your guys' thoughts? Did you like this twist, or did you think it was a little contrived and disappointing in your eyes? To those who've made it thus far, thank you so much for watching, and sorry again for my hiatus. I promise to make a lot more consistent content moving forward, so thank you for your understanding. Lastly, thank you so much to my channel members. Your guys' support is really appreciated and means a lot to me. Have a great day, and I'll see you guys all in the next one. Stay curious, anime fam. Peace.